It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. Hey, it's Crimson Courage Thursday. My God, I mean, Harvard's all over the news. I better talk about Harvard. I mean, when everyone's talking about Harvard, you shouldn't talk about Harvard. When no one's talking about Harvard and their connection, then that's when you should talk about Harvard. That's when I usually talk about Harvard. But no, now's the time to talk about Harvard. Anyway, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to my Takeout, my Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. And the considerable thing today is the fight for the First Amendment, academic freedom, the fight for higher education, the fight for independence, a revolution in education, and it's being mounted by Harvard against the attack by the current administration led by one Donald J. Trump. And I have to say that there's that one picture that they show from the church where the speakers are looking out at the crowd, because I had the benefit of looking out at that same kind of looking out at a similar crowd. That's Harvard Yard's Tercentenary Square, or Tercentenary Square, or theater rather. There's I was looking at it, says it has a capacity for 32,000 people. I don't know, but when I was 21 and giving a speech from those steps from Memorial Church and looking out at that crowd, I'd never seen so many people in my life. And I gave one joke that I will never forget that I delivered. And when I stood there, I got a roar of laughter like I never have ever received before. It was intoxicating. And so, looking at images today from Harvard's graduation, it just brought back a lot of emotions about how I feel about Harvard, at what Harvard meant in my life. And mind you, this is like decades and decades and decades ago. I should be over this. And I am. I can talk about it now. But it was so emotional. Just seeing those pictures. And I have to say, even though I have mixed feelings about Harvard, I was filled with pride knowing that Harvard is standing up to the authoritarian reach of this present administration, standing up for, as I said, for the First Amendment, for academic freedom, for higher education. And I had a sense of pride. And there was a number of alum all throughout the entry to the yard today, entries, with a little label saying Crimson Courage, because it does take a certain amount of courage. And that's where the source of pride is. Who's standing up to the would-be dictator, the would-be king, the would-be, well, he's not a would-be authoritarian, to the authoritarian, but Harvard. Trump has gone after law firms. He's gone after big law firms. He's gone after big companies, gone after big countries, trying to make them bow to him, to kiss the ring. Now he's going after the biggest institution in higher education, the very first university in America, with its $53 billion endowment. He's going for the top because, if he gets Harvard, he can topple everyone else in higher education. And to its credit, Harvard is not, and there are a lot of conservatives on the Harvard Corporation. There are big donors, billionaire donors who are against Harvard, who are pro-Trump, billionaire donors who are, connected to Harvard. And I'm sure they must feel a little conflicted. because what Donald Trump is doing is a bullying act that, thank goodness, Harvard's there standing up to Donald Trump. The latest is that while the graduation ceremonies were going on, commencement exercises, as they're called, Judge Alison Burroughs in a Boston court halted any change in international students' procedures at Harvard till further notice. And she was forthright and direct. Said, "Hey, I don't want to see any change. We'll go back and we'll set a date. We'll argue this out, but nothing changes for now." As it should be. Donald Trump thinks he's done the easiest thing, right? He's gone after international students. But it's just a xenophobic and racist move to go after international students at Harvard. I mean, has anyone said anything about international students being an issue before? No, this is low-hanging fruit for Donald Trump. But it shows a kind of xenophobic thing that foreign people are evil, right? This is all old school, racist moves against groups. And it's a nativist thing, right? We got to protect our country from these evil foreigners coming in to change our system. If you're nice to them, they might stay, become American citizens, and all the research and all the work they do will help not just the world, but specifically the United States. I mean, this is what I don't get. Listen, when I went to Harvard years ago, I was one of the domestic people of color. Very few of us, very few Asian Americans who were truly Asian Americans, who were qualified or given the opportunity to go to the school. Most students, when I was there as a freshman, who were Asian, Filipino, tended to be international students. I actually was friendly with a great number of international students, mostly from Africa, from, let's see, where, from other countries, not Asia, not the Philippines. But, my friends, there were Asian Africans, Indians who went through Kenya and got into Harvard. Some of whom still have a connection to Harvard. But as I said, some of the people I still am in touch with after all these years are foreign international students. And it was that was when people like me, coming from the cities, were just beginning to emerge as candidates. Oh, we could go to that school. Oh, we took the AP classes. We're capable. I mean, if you figure that Civil Rights Act 64, by the time they got a sense of affirmative action going, might be, 68. I don't know. I mean, they're still, they were making it up, right? By the time in the early 70s when I got in, they were really just trying to figure out what's going on. Who are these people in America that make up diversity? And I remember being there in the 70s, and there were fewer people like me and a whole lot more international students. But I was grateful for that because the international students tended to be my friends. They'd say, "Oh, you're a little different from the other Harvards. You're like us." I said, "Yeah, and I am and not, but I guess I am." And so I always enjoyed being in their company. And now, but we're talking about the high level international, not just the undergrads, research, postdocs. We're talking PhD candidates, med school, scientists, people who really have an opportunity to change the world. And Harvard's going against them. If you figure, or not Harvard, but Trump is going against them. And you figured he was going to do that because they were going after the Chinese scientists, right? Figuring that there's a connection with the, the Communist Party, China. And if they're going to go after the scientists, well, that it was only a matter of time that they'd go after students and the people who are applying to go to school to work with the scientists who are here on grants. And so it was like, it was bound to happen. The domino, if you go after the researchers, as they have in other institutions, claiming that they're spies, right? You'd go after the students next. And that seems to be the route that Donald Trump is taking at Harvard. It's racist, it's xenophobic, it's wrong, and it's short-sighted. Because these are people who could choose to stay. They could choose to say, hey, I'm doing my research at Harvard. My research belongs to the world. But, we'll make money with it through Harvard and American corporations or whatever. That's what Harvard is a hub for, at the highest levels of research and real breakthroughs. And I just think that Donald Trump you're seeing the dark side of America first. You're seeing the short-sightedness of America first when he goes after Harvard and he goes after international students. And thank goodness for the judge today in Boston, Judge Burroughs, who said, no, we're going to keep things in place and we're going to argue another day. But for now, we're going to keep things in place for international students, because a lot of them are in limbo, scared to figure out, are we going to go back to our homes in Canada, Europe, Asia, and then risk not being able to stay? So some of them are just hanging out. Boston summers aren't that muggy. We'll stay. But an incredible disruption and a threat to an institution that I have come to love is a little too extreme, I think. But I have come to terms with what Harvard has meant to me. I talk about it a lot because, because it sounds like you're bragging. It's not bragging if, you came from, my kind of background. Parents never went to college. Father was more drinker, gambler than anything else. And I was capable to be in the freshman class, 1977. Actually, 76. I had advanced standing, which put me in the same position as the current president of Harvard, Alan Garber, who remembered that I was one of those 76-7 guys. And when I saw him last October, he came up to me and said, Emil. And I said, Alan, Dunster House. I mean, we had common friends. We weren't really buddies, but he's the president. Well, back then he wasn't. Back then he was just, I think, provost. But it was at the time of the bombings in Gaza, and people didn't know what to do, and all the political repercussions, and then Garber emerged as the president. And today, from the stage of Memorial Church, he got a standing ovation, which is different from what he got a year ago when people were trying to figure out what's happening with Harvard. What's wrong with Harvard? And they fired President Gay, Claudine Gay, and they hired Garber. And it was a surprise to the people in my class, although not really, because Garber's that kind of guy who he's there. He's such a smart guy. He's a doctor and an economist. You figure a guy like that could figure out why healthcare is so expensive. But he's doing the job now, and he got a standing O. And I was happy for him, even though he's got a lot of other issues on the plate, some issues that we disagree on. But I was happy for him, and I was proud of my connection with Harvard, because I like to say to people that Harvard's the biggest and best community college in all of America. I mean, it is. I mean, if your family makes under $200,000, you get in free. You can go to Harvard if you qualify. And if you qualify and you're poor, that's no excuse. You should go. Now, there might be other issues you might have about going to Harvard, but I think looking back, the one thing I did was I gave that speech senior year, and that memory has stayed with me for all my life, knowing that I made that group of people. And like I said, I was reading where online it said that the theater there, Harvard Square or Harvard Yard, from the Mem Church looking out at Widener, all those people, that they could hold 32,000 people. I don't know if 32,000 people were at my speech, but there were about, I would say 5 to 10. There were a lot of people. And that thing I felt, I'll just never forget. It's a lasting memory. Now, I wish I say, that formula I created in math or in biology, I'll never forget that. But it's the simple human things that stay with you, right? And that's my Harvard story. I'm proud to say I've gone there, but more proud of the fact that leading the charge against Donald Trump is Harvard University. And it's time for the rest of us to stand with them. Because I heard one conservative say today, well, Donald Trump really picked a great political target, because Harvard has something like 54,000 applicants and they only accept 3%. That's not much. Like, they accept 12,000 people, something like that. And they got 54,000 applicants. That's a lot of rejections. That's a lot of hate. Each and every year, you got that many people who hate you. And so there's that residual effect. And then there's the people who say, oh, they're just elitists. And then there's a residual effect of people who say, oh, they're the rich people. They're the elites. And that makes me proud, because my father never made more than $400 a month. We were not rich elites. In some ways, I was there to help round out their experience, to help them see that there was a world outside their elite view, that there are people amongst them who are just regular people trying to get a decent education, trying to get an opportunity. Just like my father, who came from the Philippines in 1928. That was my role. And in many ways, I feel like maybe I failed because in my class was this guy, John Roberts, who's, the Supreme Court guy who voted against affirmative action. And I'm thinking, if I had only convinced him about the value of people like me at Harvard, maybe he would have voted differently on the idea of reversing affirmative action. I think about that because that was really the overall purpose of Harvard admitting someone like me. But I will say this. Harvard's done a pretty good job at diversity. You look at Asians. Asians are the class of 2028. The last stats that were released a few years ago. About 37% Asian American. When I was there in the 70s, that number was probably 2-3%. Harvard's done, I think, a much better job than anyone can imagine at trying to make sure that the best of the applicants are there. And you can call it affirmative action, but that is not synonymous with unqualified. There's a lot of people who have different qualities, different things that they've got going for them. It's their right to pick a class that they think makes sense. I think they've done a great job since the 70s. But when the affirmative action ruling came down and went against Harvard, I think that was a sign to conservatives. Yeah, we beat down the elite. We beat down those people. And we can go get them further. That's why we're seeing this. Because there's no reason for this. There's no reason for this kind of aggressive effort against Harvard. Unless it's some kind of personal vendetta. I've read in the papers. Harvard's got a personal vendetta against the Pritzker family, Penny Pritzker, who's, a big mucky muck at Harvard. There's J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, right? Democrat, possibly. Person who wants to run for president. I think he does want to run for president. So there's a lot of things that, of course, there's a lot of people who are on the Trump side. Like, is it Peter Navarro? Not very smart. Believes in tariffs. He's there with Trump. Bill Ackman, hedge fund guy. A lot of money. He's there with Trump. So you got to wonder, when will the White House take its foot off the gas? And I think it will when it decides it's a liability, when it's no longer beneficial to go after Harvard, go after international students. If it starts to affect other institutions and universities who don't have the wherewithal to fight back, this could backfire against Donald Trump. Because otherwise, he's just picking against Harvard. That's unfair. Believe me, Harvard, if you're going to go after Harvard, it doesn't make sense to not go after all the others, all the other Ivy League schools, all the other big prestige public universities. That's the other thing that suggests Trump doesn't have a leg to stand on. Harvard's a private institution. You can't tell them what to do. But he's going to try to get away with as much as he can. And just like everything else, that he does it is unlawful or illegal or an overreach, it'll be up to the courts to stop him. And that's the other big story that's hitting the news about the courts saying, oh, the tariffs are bad, tariffs are wrong. And then the appeals court saying, no, he can do the tariffs. And so once again, we get this whiplash, yo-yo, and we see the emergence of the phrase taco. Trump going taco, meaning Trump always chickens out. And he says, oh, here's the tariffs, 145%. Oh, we're going to bring it down to 45. Oh, here the tariffs are going to go after we're going to give you 2 more weeks. Trump always chickens out. Doesn't just apply to tariffs. It applies to everything. Oh, I want to bring peace to Ukraine. I'll give it another 2 weeks. Oh, Vladimir, another 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks. It's always another 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin's eating his lunch. Trump's lunch. Trump's taco. Maybe he should try burritos, I'm thinking. Because tacos are messy. Burritos are kind of like, you wrap them, and maybe it should be the Trump burrito, but that would not be a good acronym. But a burrito, that would fit the model of what's happening between him and Putin. You hold that burrito to your mouth, and the taco, Trump always chickens out. That's a new phrase in Wall Street. It's a sort of Orwellian, up is down, love is hate, war is peace, Trump is taco. Trump, taco. So, I talk about this Harvard stuff because there have been times when we've had good team. Harvard has had good athletic teams to root for. I mean, generally speaking, always competitive in the Ivy Leagues, for football, occasionally for basketball. Jeremy Lin, played for Harvard. Allison Feaster, women's basketball, great women's basketball teams. Harvard hockey, right? I mean, so there's some teams where you root for Harvard if you live, around the country. You say, oh, wow, yeah, go Crimson, right? And then you see other schools like Alabama, SEC schools, Big Ten schools. You say, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if our teams were that good and won all the time like that. But I'm telling you, this fight against Trump for freedom of speech and for academic freedom, that's more important. That is a real reason, a real call for crimson courage, crimson pride. And I just, there a lot of times people from Harvard are ashamed to talk about it. Now, I've never been ashamed to talk about it. But it wasn't because I was, was bragging. A lot of people are ashamed because they don't want to seem like they're bragging, because, it seems like you're boastful that you went to Harvard. So people always say, oh, yeah, I went to, that school in Boston. Okay, yeah, we understand. Because people want to be modest. They have a natural tendency to want to be modest. But when you're looking at a guy like me and you say, when most people have that assumption, this happened once before with me. I was talking to a big star, big Hollywood star, big, oh, you know her name. Oh, she's won an Oscar. And I once asked her about a lesser role that she played. And she didn't like it. She said, it was like going to school, Emil, That's why I took that lesser role. And you know what that's about, going to school. Because, what school did you go to, Emil? I said, no, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. No, I don't know, what school did you go to, Emil? And she was really pressuring me, like trying to make me feel bad. And then that's how Harvard helped me. I said, well, I went to Harvard. That shut her up. But good. It's one of the few times Harvard has really ever helped me. But that's why I like to mention it when I do. It's because then people say, "Oh, where'd you go to school?" Podunk you. Oh, I'm sorry, Podunk you. If you went to Podunk you, I'm sorry. I'm sure it was good. I'm sure it had a good. I'm sure it had a good French department. But no, this is a moment. This is a moment where everyone is talking about Harvard, and I just hope people understand what's at stake. That Harvard is not the elitist institution that they think it is. It isn't. They let me in. All right. Are we talking enough about Harvard? Every now and then. Because this is the week. It's historically not the week because the week, the way the calendar was when I went to school there, class day and graduation day didn't really happen until June 10th or so. So they moved it up a couple weeks, which you know what that means. That means they probably have shorter reading periods. I don't know. Or they start earlier. Something. But I just know that it's generally in June when it's much hotter, muggier. And I remember my graduation was June 10th and 11th. 10th was class day, 11th was the graduation. Very important days of my life. And that's why no matter what, no matter how many pineapples they made me carry around Harvard Yard, no matter how many times I felt like I didn't belong, always a soft spot in my heart for Veritas. Veritas. All right, that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. We'll try to come up. It's breaking news because an Asian American is speaking. I mean, how many times do you see that? How many times do you see an Asian American really talking about stuff, about real stuff in the news? Tomorrow, hopefully, back with Professor Dan Gonzalez talking about the news. So many things to talk about. This terror stuff. And then, of course, the international student stuff. We'll see what's on Professor Dan's mind. And, yeah. We like to end with a little love. We believe in love. I know that song. No, we believe in love. We believe in love. I just think that, we're here together, right? And forming a little community. And I want to put it out there, because you send it out, it comes back twofold. It really does. And then you receive and send it back. And then we're like receiving and giving and receiving and giving. And that's how the world goes, right? That's the energy of the world. All right. That's what my guru says. I don't know. We don't always believe the gurus, but. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Happy graduation, all you graduates, especially those Crimson Courage graduates. Congratulations. Till next time. Emil Guillermo here. Mahal Kita.